Good day and welcome back everyone to another video. Today I wanted to make a quick video where I talk about why I chose to play this character, what my plan is going forward with this character, and what the next steps on that way are, what lies ahead of us today. And I decided to play Bladeblast Bladefall. Now Bladefall is kind of a two-component sort of skill setup, right? You first use the Bladefall, which leaves lingering blades on the ground, and then you can detonate these lingering blades with Bladeblast, which also happens to chain through the blades, right? It automatically detonates blades nearby. You can also use this on Blade Vortex, but the number one way to use Bladeblast is by providing blades with Bladefall. Bladefall you only get in Act 3, so if you really want to play Bladeblast starting from Act 2, where you can pick up Bladeblast, you could theoretically use Ethereal Knives, which is an Act 1 skill to spawn blades, but it's just straight up worse at spawning blades than Bladefall is, because it leaves less blades in the ground. And yeah, I mean, you can see how many blades this are. This is Bladefall linked with Unleash and Spell Cascade. So Spell Cascade makes it that the supported skill does not only cast on the point where you cast it, but also casts once ahead of it and behind it, or in front of it and behind it. And so you basically get a triple cast from Spell Cascade, but you also get another triple multiplier or quadruple multiplier from Unleash, right? Because Unleash collects up to 3 seals, and the skill is, when you cast it, is repeated for every seal that is consumed, and you consume all the seals. I don't know whether you can see it, whether it's covered by my camera, because I wasn't aware that I need to check that, but here you can see the seal count go up. I'm sure you're familiar. Bladefall Bladeblast is so good numerically, right, that a lot of people played it last league, and it was played not only as a poison variant on Occultist, on Assassin, but you could also play it as a poison variant on Pathfinder, I believe, and a lot of people actually played it as an Archmage variant, where mana stacking provides flat lightning damage. That's either on Hierophant, or you could also pull that off on Raider even. Raider, really good defensive ascendancy, kind of underrated for stuff like this, because it's really hard to get the damage that you need, but the defenses on Raider are top notch. You get dodge cap, you get sick evasion. It's really nice. And despite the fact, or because of the fact that it was one of the #1 meta skills last league, I decided to not play it. I decided that I wanted to engage with other things. I did play Detonate Dead with Desecrate, and this reminds me very much of Detonate Dead Desecrate, so much that I actually wrote a post on, I actually wrote a tweet here. Bladefall Bladeblast is like Desecrate VD. Only you can't Bladeblast monster corpses, and you can't consume lingering blades with offerings, and you need actual base damage from yourself instead of it coming from the monster HP. Which basically sums up my thoughts, right? Obviously it's a little bit of a hyperbole, because it's very good. The base damage is very good, despite the fact that it got nerfed, which is another reason I wanted to play it now, before next league maybe it gets completely destroyed. Because we don't know exactly. The nerf is relatively mild considering how insanely powerful this combo is, and in the community we've all been thinking that GGG kind of wants to facilitate this style of play. GGG wants people to press multiple buttons and is willing to reward that with good numbers. But yeah, anyway, Bladeblast lost about, I would say, here, it went from 13 to 20 to 11 to 17 at level 1, and from 279 to 418 to 210 to 315, which I believe is pretty much exactly a quarter. It's like it lost 25% of its base damage. And then it also has its added damage effectiveness, which is the multiplicative factor that factors in flat added damage to spells, say from auras like Anger that adds a flat amount of fire damage to your spells, or from something like, just a wand that has flat lightning damage to spells, or the Archmage archetype that I talked about earlier, where you consume mana in order to provide flat lightning damage to your spells. This is how it's factored in, right? And previously you got 60% of that added damage onto your ability, and now you only get 50, so that's 1/6 disappearing. And since Bladeblast has about, like, a finished Bladeblast build in early endgame, I would say, has about 50-50 damage coming from the base damage from the gem, and the other 50 coming from gear and from other sources of flat damage. Actual crafted out POBs, someone told me they went from 6 million to 4.8 million, so they roughly lost a fifth, which is between a fourth and a sixth, so makes sense, right, if you look at the numbers like this. But it's still insanely good. If you go from 6 million to 4.8 million, obviously the skill is still viable, skill is still fine. Archmage is a really, really good version of the build. Brittleknee just wrote a guide for Archmage BFBB Hierophant, which is really good. I'll recommend and link in the comments down below if you guys are interested. And I decided I want to do poison, but I didn't want to go with the obvious assassin kind of stuff. But I wanted to go with Occultist for several reasons, but the number one reason being that I just hadn't played an Occultist in ages, and I just really, really want to get these explosions. Like, I love Occultist for the explosions, Profane Bloom, right? It's just so good. It helps so much with the clear. And if you can see this, I'm sure you can see that this is actually amazing. Wait, I can switch on the sound so you guys can hear the poofs. So this is how it sounds. And a lot of times you will notice that the build already kills with just the Bladefall. I mean, I'm barely level 68, so I'm like a little bit over leveled. This is a 65 zone. I'm just about to go into Kitava, right? I did everything up to Kitava yesterday. Was a little bit a slow first day, and I decided to make one of the best produced videos I ever released on this channel. If you haven't watched it yet, check it out. It's in the description below as well, but it's the most recent video that I produced and released, where I talked a little bit about what I think is one of the strongest mechanics for farming in endgame in Path of Exile around this time. And yeah, I really like this build despite its indirect feel and its high dependence on cast speed. Like, you really need a lot of cast speed for this to feel good, because obviously not only do you have to get out the Bladefall, but also the Bladeblast. And that can feel sluggish to some people, but again, that's the price that you pay for the insanely good numbers that you get from the Bladeblast gem. And like I said, like, most of the monsters already dying to the Bladefall. Just like that. If there's no rare in the pack, then I just use Bladefall and everything explodes. Right? See, these guys would even probably die to the poison damage still. It just takes too long. No, not entirely. We're not quite there yet. But eventually we will be. The thing is also, my Bladefall doesn't have that much chance to poison in comparison to the Bladeblast, because the Bladeblast is linked to the poison support. And I'm also not running my auras. That's a big fault, right? So we're not running Herald of Agony, which is our current crutch to reach 100% poison chance. Later on, we're gonna drop that for a Cluster Jewel. But for the time being, we use that. I just put Withering Step into the build, and I'm not sure whether I want to keep that on left click, because Withering Step takes away charges from Flame Dash and puts it on cooldown. As you can see, sometimes Flame Dash just starts to not recharge anymore. Like, while Withering Step is not on cooldown itself, other movement skills here, like there, you see, can't recover either. So it's kind of, I'm not sure whether I want to keep it there. I might want to put it onto cast when damage taken, so it's used for bosses. But it's also kind of a crutch, because the actual source of withering in this build, because I'm Occultist, will be Withering Presence, where nearby hindered enemies deal reduced damage over time, and every second you inflict Withered onto enemies. So it's gonna be fine. The build that I'm following for this, quick disclaimer, this is not a build guide. I'm just quickly trying to give you an update, and I haven't perfected the build. I'm not even in maps, right? I'm going to make a build guide. I'm going to work towards that, but I might actually die before that, even though I will try my best to not die, but Experience shows that I always die early on in the league, at least once in the first week. But, you know, maybe I won't. Maybe I won't this time. But the build that I was following for this is Somayd's Bladefall Bladeblast Occultist, which is a very softcore oriented guide from Somayd's YouTube video. This is the League Starter POB, very well documented. You see you get all the Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 leveling setups. It tells you when to respec. I respec'd a little bit later because I didn't have the gear. And in general, my approach is more like, oh, I'm doing a regular leveling caster tree, like I stretched for Overload and for Dark Arts here and went into Templar Start for life and Ele resists and spell damage and elemental damage. Because I was leveling elemental just like the build suggests, right? You go with Orb of Storms, Stormblast Mine, and then you go into... Actually, you could go Armor Brand Cremation, but this build recommends to stay Orb of Storms and Stormblast Mine and Wave of Conviction until Act 5. I personally, having done that and having played Lightning Spire Trap, I have to say Lightning is just straight up inferior to actual fire damage leveling, so next time I'll level a witch like that, I'll probably switch to Armageddon Brand and Cremation in Act 3, just because it's so good to kill single targets. But yeah, my general idea for this build is I'll go down here to Acro and Phase Acro, but I'll not have all of this, right? And instead I'll have some defenses here. Like I think I'm still currently in Purity of Flesh, for example, right? And I'll be in Templar Start for the time being, and also pick up Quick Recovery. I was thinking originally I want to go down here to the Life and refund that later, but it's about this that I'm going to get to, right? Like this is approximately the setup that we're going to do for now. And then when we have enough points, when we're like level 90 plus, I'll do a big refund and try to pick up Wind Dancer. But that requires me to have good gear. And some other things I wanted to do differently. I mean, this is obviously using a Tabula, Embalmer, Zeri Step. This is very softcore League Start gear, right? No offense there, that's a good thing, it's a good plan. And this also relies on a Witchfire Brew, which I'm not sure whether I can get that. So my approach is actually to... I had a 5-link handed to me early, right, in the league. I decided to not 5-link my Bladeblast, mostly because I know Bladeblast needs at least Poison linked to it, so that needs 2 green, and then ideally you want a 3rd green for Swift Affliction, or for Deadly Ailments, I think. If you can, and I just wasn't very confident I could roll 3 green onto this chest piece, and at the same time I didn't have the mana for Blasphemy, and I was like, hey, it would be great if things actually are cursed when I kill them, because cursing is the precondition for Profane Bloom. Cursed enemies you or your minions kill have a 40% chance to explode, dealing 1/4 of their maximum life as chaos damage. So I went and put Hex Touch and Despair onto the Bladefall next to Unleash and Spell Cascade. So I actually curse all the monsters that get hit by the blades before I detonate for a big damage boost, because Despair does not only reduce enemy chaos resist and make cursed enemies take increased damage from damage over time effect, but it also grants flat chaos damage to hits against cursed enemies, and that's why this is obviously the first curse of choice for the build. Later on I want to get an additional curse. Malediction is the plan for endgame, but this is going to be what I pick in Uber Lab, right? This is my Eternal Lab Ascendancy, and Withering Presence is what I take in Merciless Lab, just because I like the defense of the Chaos Resist, and I like the more Chaos damage. Obviously this is really valued, we don't have to talk about why I picked this up. Both of these things are really good, and I wish I could even pick Vile Bastion. I'm not sure how long I'm gonna stay life-based, that's another thing. I would really like to go CI or low life with the build. And I think going Acro Phase, Acro Wind Dancer is just a transitional stage for me, but we'll see how it works out. Should I quickly go over my skill setups? I guess I should. So again, Bladefall, Unleash, Spell Cascade with Hex Touch, Despair. I link the Bladeblast with poison, efficacy, and controlled destruction. Don't do that. Actually, efficacy is, I think, worse than Unbound Ailments, but I wasn't able to buy a leveled Unbound Ailments as a witch in Act 3, I think, because I didn't do library, and then I didn't buy one in Act 6. I just forgot it. Again, this is not a full build guide. I'm just telling you how I'm doing things. Be critical, think for yourself, and if you want to play the build, follow Somayd's build guide that I link in the description below, because that's probably going to be better than just following random stuff that I put together, because I refuse to follow a build guide, because much of the fun of the game for me is derived from figuring these things out with trial and error and being like, okay, this could work, or it doesn't work, and so on. But yeah, Herald of Agony, because it gives 20% chance to poison on hit. We get 60% from the poison support, we get 20 from Herald of Agony, and I get 25 from over here, right? 10, 15. And later on, we're gonna be able to replace the poison on hit chance from Herald of Agony by getting Fatal Toxins, actually. I don't even need a Cluster Jewel. Just Fatal Toxins, and we get another 25 here, leading up to that, and that's going to be great. And I can drop Herald of Agony, and my plan is to use a Heretic's Veil for a defensive blasphemy. Now, Heretic's Veil is a unique that hasn't really seen that much use recently. It used to be super OP. I don't think that many people are still using it, but it is fairly good, especially on Occultist when you get increased effect of your curses. On the notes here, you can get more increased effect of curses elsewhere. I picked up Whispers of Doom already. This is kind of a waste because I don't need the additional curse. I don't have a way of applying the additional curse. But the idea is that as soon as I can drop the Herald of Agony, I'm gonna put the Temporal Chains in here and use Temporal Chains on a reservation over Herald of Agony. And then, as soon as I get a Despair on Hit curse ring, like a curse on hit ring, you can get those from Delve, you can craft a Hunter ring to roll Despair on hit curse. There is different versions of like, different ways of getting a curse on hit ring. You could also use the unique ring that's called Mark of Submission. That's a unique restricted to Delve League. That is an unset ring where you can socket a curse, and that curse is then globally applied to all your hits. Is really good, much better than people give it credit for, because it allows you to apply level 20 or even level 21 curses globally on hit, not specific to spells, not specific to one single like ability that you linked with Hex Touch, but it actually applies to everything, so also to the Profane Bloom explosions, because those also have a hit, right? When cursed enemies you or your minions kill have a 40% chance to explode and deal a quarter of their max life as chaos damage. That is a hit by your character, it just does not count as spell damage or attack damage, and it doesn't work with this stuff here, right? Chance to poison on hit with, oh, this is global. But this has chance to poison on hit with spell damage, for example, and that would not work with Profane Bloom in the same way that poison only works with the ability that is linked to it. And obviously these 60% chance to poison on hit are not global, right? Let's move on. We use Arcane Surge, Flame Dash, Faster Casting to make sure that the Flame Dash provides the Arcane Surge buff and that it doesn't lock me in place for too long when I use it in quick succession. I'm using a cast when damage taken Steel Skin. Steel Skin is out-leveled at the moment because I just bought the cast when damage taken. Ideally, obviously, you want it so that the Steel Skin is triggered by that. And then we have 2 reservations in here which are not affected by cast when damage taken. These are just their Vitality and Clarity to flat reservation auras to consume a little bit of the excess mana that I have, because I do kind of get away with not running a mana flask since I'm only running a 4-link on my main damage. And then this is Second Wind, Increased Area of Effect, and Withering Step. This is just to help Withering Step have a lower cooldown. It does not get a second use because it is an instant skill. It's still worth linking just for the little bit of cooldown recovery rate. And Increased Area of Effect, actually because it applies Wither in an AoE, and that makes the Area of Effect bigger. I originally had Area of Effect on Plague Bearer, but I just don't have the sockets right now. Plague Bearer, obviously the #1 skill in these builds to get some extra damage early on. This really, really helps the build have good clear and good boss damage because it just gives you extra damage based on the gem. It kind of takes away a little bit of the poison damage that you apply while farming, and then charges up that way, and then you get a couple 100,000 damage here. Gem level 15, it's 317,000, and then you can apply that damage over, over 8 seconds, because it's 12, it depletes 12 seconds, 12% of the plague value when infecting begins. Yeah, 8 times 12 is roughly 100, 8 times 12.5. And then basically it depletes after 8 seconds and is empty, and you need to recharge it again. But it's a nice extra bonus. And Malevolence and Herald of Agony, 2 more reservations just unlinked, socketed there. So again, big goals today are getting that Heretic's Veil. Well, of course, first of all, we're gonna do Merciless Lab and Kitava, get into maps and start farming maps, and get our Atlas completion done. And then Heretic's Veil as soon as we can get away with not running Herald of Agony, and then we'll run Temp Chains to have a little bit of time to cast our abilities, especially in the middle of like a hasted pack. I've gotten into a lot of sketchy situations with Ultimatum because multiple rares spawned. You just want to be able to get out your combo skill. In a build that depends so heavily on getting out 2 skills that have fairly low cast time. I think that's all I wanted to say, and I don't want to make the video any faster. I hope you can appreciate me taking the time to talk a little bit about these things. I'm having a little bit of slower approach this league. I love speedrunning in Path of Exile, I love racing, but I've just burned myself out a little bit on that with all the events towards the end of the league. So now league start, especially because it already went slow, we were forced to go slow on day 1. I was like, okay, might as well take a casual approach and, you know, appreciate the view a little bit. Like, look at the flowers, smell the trees and the birds, and just not care too much about being in the end of the end game as fast as I can. It's just not necessary. But the video is already 20 minutes long. Who would have thought? I've been just talking. If you gain anything from this, if you were entertained, informed, you got inspired to play some Bladefall, Bladeblast, Occultist yourself, make sure to tell me in the comments down below. Visit me on my stream at twitch.tv/campmasterop, and consider supporting the channel by subscribing to the Twitch. I know that I've been slacking on the YouTube, and the fact that the videos currently aren't doing that great is simply the reason that I need to pick up and do more frequent videos, which is why I did this, because I think that you guys deserve a bigger output of more helpful Path of Exile content from me. And with these words, I want to say goodbye. Thank you for watching, guys and gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in the next video, and hope you still have a great league start weekend. Even though that's almost finished, but you know, most people take time off their jobs, right? Anyway, have a great day. Bye bye.